they live in and the people they live with. Mixing compassion and leadership, peer educators have surfaced on almost every college and university campus, wanting to do what they can to make a difference.
Every campus has a different structure. Every campus has a different agenda or style. Yet there are certainly some universals about peer educators. The main one is that they are willing to take the identity of being a role model, activist, friend, and teacher. In other words, being a caring helper.
Being a caring helper means being open and approachable, being able to listen objectively. It means being and considering yourself a teacher, offering options and taking risks, and not being afraid to intervene in harmful situations. It means touching another person's life.
All right, so as we start to move into the training, just a little bit of a heads up. Y'all have your SCIM workbook here. You want to take notes, you want to take good notes, because tomorrow's certification exam is open book. Because I know I don't like taking tests. It's been years since I've taken a test, so I understand that there could be some test anxiety, so it is an open book exam. You will be able to look through your notes. I will also do my best to say, hey, you might want to underline this, you might want to star this, you might want to write this down in case you were to see it on an exam tomorrow. Hopefully helping you to guide you to a 100% pass rate for the class tomorrow afternoon whenever we take the certification exam. I have close to 100% pass rating for the courses that I facilitate, so please don't ruin that for me. No, just kidding. So we are going to go through this. I will tell you what you need to do. There's about 16 to 20 hours of activities in the workbook. We're only going to have about 12 hours to do this. So there are great reflection activities for you to do throughout the year, some things to look back on, some skills, techniques, some things to think about as you start moving on through your time as peer educators. So as we start off, I want you to look at pages, I believe, 3, 4, and 5. Yep, 3, 4, and 5. There's a in there. That's what we're going to start off with. This is not graded. This is for you to sort of write down some answers of how you're feeling with the course content before we go through the course. We'll then give you a post-test tomorrow, which will sort of evaluate whether or not you've grown in these areas. This is for some data analysis for us in the past or in the future. So if you want to go through pages 3, 4, and 5 and answer those questions in the workbook, we will come back together right after that. Powerful. So we'll set some ground rules. We'll talk about the importance of peer education, roles that peer educators play, as well as talking about some traps that peer educators fall into, and then talking about some ethics and integrity. But before we get started, really, whenever I start a training, I like to set some ground rules for the group, because we're going to be talking about maybe some serious topics in the next 2 days. So I wanted to make sure that we have a good set of ground rules going forward, so that way everyone feels comfortable, able to share, to make this as comfortable of a space as possible for folks to participate. So I know that there are some up there, but I want this to come from the group. So I'm just going to popcorn style it. If folks want to shout out some ground rules that they think would be good to follow, that would be great. It's 9 a.m. on a Monday, folks. Yes?
I guess to be open to if anything is said to them.
Okay, so maybe open to new ideas, as well as the perspectives of others. Okay, good. Yes. Yes.
Don't try and cut people off when they're talking.
Cool. Yeah. Respect the speaker. Cool. Happy to stand here for a while.
I would say keep it a safe space, if someone is saying something, I don't know.
Okay.
Someone's talking about something personal, I think keep it a safe space.
Okay. Yeah, try to keep it a safe space. Or a safer space, that I like to say, because you can't necessarily guarantee 100% safety 100% of the time for 100% of people. But try to keep it as safe as possible. Ground rules. Yep.
Be engaged in the program.
Yeah, I love that. Be engaged. I'm a huge introvert, so I don't like to talk, so I'm trying to make you all talk, okay? So be engaged, because it's boring if you're sitting here for 2 days and don't participate. Laugh at my corny jokes. That would be good. Yeah.
Be an active listener.
Active listener. What do you mean by that?
Like, you know, really listen to whoever's talking and trying to understand what they're saying.
Try to really listen and hear what people are saying. Yeah. We'll talk about listening in Module 3, which is all about listening skills.
Maybe like not jump to conclusions about like what someone's like trying to say, like finish out what they're saying, their like opinions.
Yeah. So respecting opinions, don't jump to conclusions. Yes.
Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Ask questions, yes. We can always come back to this if we need to. Just some additional pieces up here. Logistics and cover. Obviously, be comfortable if you need to use the restroom. Use the restroom. You don't need to raise your hand. If you need to get some snacks, get some snacks. You don't need to ask permission. Be willing to discuss. Be open to some conversations. There's a lot of group conversation opportunities. Everyone's going to be at a different level, so respect that. This could be brand new information to some folks. This could be information that folks have heard before. Respect confidentiality. I like to call this Vegas rules. You know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So, some Vegas rules here. And then the last one's not really a ground rule, but more of an FYI. There's going to be a test. So make sure that you're not falling asleep because you're falling asleep. You're not listening whenever I say, hey, you want to remember this for the test tomorrow. So keeping that in mind at all times. All right, let's do an icebreaker. Let's get some teams built. Your team.
Know yourself, show yourself. I love that.
You're going to steal that motto, aren't you?
Yeah, it's gonna be on my Instagram bio.
There we go. All right, so wanted to get some of those creative juices flowing because I know that it's like 9:30 in the morning. We will do a similar activity in a few slides, but now that we have our teams, we're going to use these for a few different activities throughout the course of the training. But before we get to more icebreakers, I want to... Oh, I thought that was falling. I was like, oh no.
No, I just can't see.
You just can't see. Awesome. A little bit of history about peer education and the Bacchus Network. Better?
Yeah.
Okay. Bacchus used to be its own 501c3 standalone nonprofit organization, founded in 1975 at the University of Florida. Basically, some students there recognized that their peers were engaging in some high-risk behaviors, and the norm or the belief was that everyone was doing this stuff, but they knew that that wasn't necessarily the case. So they came together, they formed a group, and said, hey, peer educators, we are trying to educate our students, our friends, letting them know that they can make healthier choices, and overwhelmingly they are making healthier choices. And that is sort of where peer education was founded. So about 41 years ago. It was its own 501c3 organization. Bacchus was for those 39 years or so, and then eventually it merged with NASPA, which is a larger nonprofit for higher education for student affairs. People who work on college university campuses who are staff members rather than faculty. So Dr. C, who was in here, found out he was actually on our board of directors. So that is his association, that is his nonprofit, who he reports to. If there is for example, if you're a doctor, you might be part of the AMA. If you're a lawyer, you might be part of the Bar Association. If you are in student affairs, you might be a part of NASPA, and that's what this organization is. We have about 15,000 members, 1,500 different campuses that are campus members, institutional members. So we do have a pretty large reach. That's the first question on the exam is going to be about Bacchus. Because it's no longer its own organization, you can mark whatever you want, and it will be free. Woohoo! So really, it's a 29-question test. I see 2 hands about this slide, and I've never had questions on this slide.
What
So.
does Bacchus stand for?
That's exactly what
Okay, so yeah, because Bacchus is the name of the Roman god for wine, which
For what?
wine,
Oh,
Of
like I said
wine.
line.
like the alcoholic beverage. So it's a little ironic that we would name a nonprofit Bacchus, but it is an acronym boosting alcohol consciousness concerning the health of university students.
like one more time.
Right? Boosting alcohol consciousness concerning the health of university students.
Yeah, I like, wait, boosting alcohol.
You like Bacchus, you don't like the whole name?
so long.
Yeah, right. So we made the acronym work. Again, it was just kind of ironic that it was the Roman god for wine. But boosting alcohol consciousness concerning there's no T in there, health of university students. We were trying to, like, where is this T in the word Bacchus? So what Bacchus did is it worked with other campuses and said, hey, here's some facts about college university students and in terms of their alcohol use. Eventually we moved into talking about other drugs, tobacco, cessation. We ended up working with Greek life a lot, fraternity and sorority life, with a group called Gamma, Greeks advising for the management of alcohol. There's another M in there that I'm missing. But you don't need to know that because the very first question on the exam is free because Bacchus is not an organization anymore. Cool? Bacchus? Ooh. All right. So there's another cheesy video which I'm going to skip because it was kind of like a promotional video for Bacchus, but again, we are not none of this information is correct, so don't mail us anything, don't fax us anything, don't call us, and don't go to the website. We'll talk about making a referral and making sure that all your referrals are correct. So, full disclaimer, this course is on a DVD, and so it's been burned onto a DVD, which means I can't edit the slides. So that is why I had to skip that video. All right, so what is peer education? What are peers? I know there's a definition up there. I can't really block the whole thing. But what is a peer? Someone thought of what it means to be a peer? Yes?
When I think of peer, I think of someone who's like in your age range.
Okay, so age-wise, someone who's a similar age of you. Did you have a hand?
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay.
I was gonna say like usually I just think of classmates.
Classmates, yep. So you're sort of in that similar setting. What else? Yeah.
You're kind of like on the same level as them, you have like certain things in common with them.
Yeah, you have things in common with them. There's not necessarily a hierarchy. Okay. Am I your peer? Me?
Not in this room, but maybe outside.
Not in this room, maybe outside. Okay, why would I not be a peer?
Well,
in this room?
because right now you're kind of our instructor, you're our teacher, you know more about us, so you're in that hierarchy.
Okay, because I'm an instructor. I appreciate you saying that because normally whenever I ask that question, the first thing to say is because you're old. So I do appreciate.
We trained them well.
Yeah, no.
None of us are old.
Oh, good, excellent. Yeah, but I'm always like older. No, just old. Okay, sounds good. We'll talk a little bit more about peers and my age tomorrow, or no, later on today. So then, peer educators. Yes, peers are a person of equal standing with you in a group. You're just kind of on equal footing. So when you think about, is anyone an RA here? Yeah, res life, 6 years. Well, 4 years as an RA and then 2 years as a hall director. Lots of stories, lots of gray hair. Those are peers. Those you are living on your floor with folks around your same age, but you are essentially a peer educator in that role too, because you have skills, you've had training, which put you in a helping position to encourage healthy or healthier choices. So that's what a peer educator is. It's someone who has training, skills, knowledge, to then work with others along your same standing in your group to make these healthier choices, these healthier decisions. So that's what a peer is, what a peer educator is. When we think about peer educators, we know, and Dr. C said this before we got started, peers have a very unique impact on one another. I spent 2+ years, maybe more, working as, quote, the administration, the big bad administration. Whenever I would tell someone who was in my office for student conduct something, they didn't hear it. I mean, maybe they heard it, but they didn't hear it. If my RA or if one of their friends said, hey, you should really consider the impact that you're having on your community, that was much more powerful. That's that power of and that impact of peer education. Because if it comes from the, quote, administration, it's a directive, but if it comes from one another, it is received more. We know that peers are the single most potent source of influence on undergraduate students. That's a theorist, Alexander Aston, kind of talks about that. And we know that interactions with peers actually leads to greater persistence and retention rates for colleges and universities. So students are staying in school because of the positive interactions they have with other peers. They're staying in school, they're completing, they're persisting all the way through graduation. When we think about peer educators, there are two primary impacts of peer education. The peer educators themselves and the campuses and communities in which they serve. So FYI, you might see that on a test tomorrow. What are the two primary impacts of peer education? That's a question. What are the two primary impacts of peer education? The peer educators themselves and the campuses and communities in which they live. There are two impacts of peer education. Peer educators themselves and the campuses and communities in which they serve. What are those two impacts again? On the peer educators themselves and the campuses and communities in which they live. I'll do a lot of repetition, so get ready. But we know that peer educators, once you've gone through training, once you've been trained peers, you're making healthier choices. We know you're building stronger leadership skills, have a greater sense of community, and you build skills outside the classroom. And there's a lot up there. You do not need to write this down word for word. I told you the thing you needed to know for the test, that there are two primary impacts of peer education, which are peer educators themselves, campuses, communities, which they live. All right. We know that you're building skills outside the classroom. That was my favorite part of college. It wasn't me sitting in class learning about the economy of Azerbaijan. Still can barely find Azerbaijan on a map. I have a general idea of where it is. But it was the leadership skills that I was building in my work as a student leader. Those are the things that have impacted my work that I'm doing today, and I really appreciate it. So remember that your impact on peer educators, it's those leadership skills that are built outside the classroom. On the campus and community, what are the effects or the impact of peer education? We're correcting misperceptions, we're promoting healthier choices, and we're having an influence on policies and on behaviors of others. So again, know those two impacts of peer education. We know that peer education is effective, and that student leaders, all of you deserve some support. That's why we have this sort of certified peer educator program. We know that you're making healthier decisions, and we know that you are serving as role models for others. We know that it's effective. We do a survey, a study every year called the National Peer Educator Study, NPES. And from that survey, this is what we got. 83% of surveyed peer educators say that they taught new information. 69% say that they changed an attitude. 63% say that they caused a positive behavior change. And 24% caused a change that resulted in saving a life. There are roughly 15 people, 16, we'll say 16, people in this room. 4 of you will have an impact on someone that can save them. That's what math tells me. So simple as it. 1 out of 4. Bless you. So keep that in mind in the work that you do, is that you can have this impact, those first 3 points, but then also you can have that greater impact in saving someone's life. We know that you're making healthier decisions, you're using less tobacco, alcohol, and other drugs. Sexually, you're making healthier decisions, and then you're engaging in less high-risk activity. We talk about high-risk activity in the next module. And you promote the real norm that students are making healthier choices. Social norms. Have folks heard of social norms marketing? A little bit? We'll dig a bit deeper in that in just a bit. All right, so now that you know what a peer educator is, the impact that peer education can have on folks, we're going to do an interactive activity, another icebreaker of sorts. So what you need to do in your group, we are going to do an activity called the Peer Educator Superhero. I will give you a piece of flip chart paper and some markers. You're going to draw a superhero that represents peer education and the ideal peer educator. Your superhero needs to have a name, and your superhero needs to have 3 superpowers, which are visualized. I need to be able to see them. So for example, a few weeks ago, we had a superhero whose name was Birth Control Betty, and her utility belt had birth control in it. That was sort of her visualized superpower. So, in your groups, you're going to come get some flip chart paper, you're going to get some markers, you're going to draw a superhero with those names and the 3 powers.
There
Okay?
are some big.
Vanna.
Woo!
Are you Greek?
No.
Okay.
That'd be pretty cool though.
They said Oba.
No, that was just me trying to get up.
I like that. I love it.
Who do we have here, Vanna?
This is Ray.
Ray. Okay.
He's our friend.
Oh, right.
Funny.
So he's got a couple, just a lot of powers.
Okay.
He has a cape.
Don't all speak at once.
And the cape's pretty cool because it's a predator lasso. So like if he senses some sort of weird vibe going on, you know, it just like takes the predator. Just like captures it.
Takes them out of the situation.
Okay.
Alright.
Yeah, go ahead.
Alright, so then he has these eyes, which are like, they're like little like circles, like seeing out into the future. It's like a hologram. And it sees like the good choices and the good part of your future.
And then the beer is like a magic 8-ball. So it's like, if you're to make this choice, what will happen? You shake the beer and it tells you. Yeah.
It's not
That's
good.
how-
And then he has a big mouth to spread awareness of alcoholic substances. And the teddy bear's for comfort. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he's, you know, you can go to him. Because he's comforting. And he's a good person.
And hat and face.
And his,
Yeah.
oh yeah, his eyebrows are not supposed to be caterpillars, but Annie messed up.
Because all the powers are green and then the eyebrows are green, so we had to do something different.
Yeah, so that's right.
All right. Thank you, Vanna. What about some tape over? We're not going to tape already.
Okay, you want me to go and do it?
Already got it. All right. Which of the 2 groups would like to go next? All right.
Now the bar mighty mouse.
The FMs. All right. Who do we have here?
Mighty Mouse.
Wow, you sound so enthusiastic.
Bye,
Mouse.
Mighty Mouse.
It's like Jerry.
Or like Mighty Mouse.
I'll just stop.
So he has big ears, so he is a very good active listener.
Big heart, because he really cares about people.
Yeah, you can go next.
He has big hands, like balance everything that he's trying to deal with and help others deal with.
He has big feet so he can get things moving.
Yes,
Nice
that's all
Birkenstocks.
Birkenstocks.
Yeah.
There's a big mouth. He has a big mouth to talk to others.
You did the coffee set?
Yeah, to keep him enthusiastic and excited.
He has like a bag on his hand.
Oh, that is to carry all of his knowledge her knowledge all about campus resources.
He has some nice tattoos.
Oh, and the big eyes to be aware of what's going on in the world. That too. For awareness or something like that, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you all. Tapes right there. All right.
What the heck?
There we go.
And Master Poe.
What?
Should have been the red. Should have been friend or
Right, like everyone.
I thought this had to be a person.
We just got to
Well,
Brothers so good, Johnny.
That's all her. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. We traced it.
I like the demo names.
This is Ellie, the educator.
And
Nice alliteration there.
yes. She has the big ears because he's a good listener.
Okay.
We got the trunk, it's always really loud, so for advocate, giving a voice to someone who feels like maybe they don't have one or they can't speak out.
Yeah. Okay. And then her hat, it has an E on it for an eraser, not just Ellie the educator. And what happens is if you make a mistake, she takes off her hat and she erases it because each day is a new day.
Aww.
And she's cute, so she's easily approachable.
Ellie!
Yay! Good job. Just be careful of putting the elephant near the mouse. But other than that, excellent job. They are good friends. Excellent. They are transcending these issues.
Funny. Still funny.
All right, so we've just played icebreakers for about like an hour and a half. So it's about time that we start actually talking about content. But before that, why don't we take a communities in which they serve, and then the answer to question number 1 on the test is whatever you want to put. Yes. All right. So 2 out of 30. Woo! Was that like 3%, 6%? Yay! You need 80 to pass. So let's keep on going. Yes. If you fail, you have the option to take a makeup test.
Like immediately?
Immediately, or you can take some time. Again, it's an open book test. I will also be here to help you, find where some of these
So you
questions
have to
might
try
be.
really, really, really hard not to pick.
Remember, I don't know if you're in here yet, but I have about 100% pass rate. So, don't mess it up, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we get little certificates?
You do get certificates and a membership card.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a resume attachment that explains what it is that peer education is.
That's what I'm talking about.
So, you will get all of that. But as we move back into content, there are 5 roles that peer educators play. Number 5 is going to show up a lot in this training. And the first one are with these 5 roles. The 5 roles of peer educators are a friend, an educator, an activist, a role model, and a team member. Feared. If that makes sense. Friend, educator, activist, role model, and team member. And now we're going to go through some slides to define what these are, because if you don't have a definition of a friend, I will give you one. For example, when you think about being a friend as a peer educator, you should be available to listen. You should be a link to resources. And you should be supportive and encouraging. Congratulations, you know what it means to be a friend. Because now we have 3 more slides that further define what this is, but don't want to have to continue to go through this, so I will skip those because I think you know what it means to be a friend. A link to resources. Supportive. When you're an educator, you teach. You increase awareness, you correct misperceptions, and you provide resources. When you teach, what are you teaching? You're teaching maybe the latest health information. What are things that you're learning that are going on campus that you can educate about? Strategies to stay safe, or stay safer, as I said earlier. And then decision-making skills. Are you making good choices? If not, can we talk about those choices that you're making? When you increase awareness, you increase awareness about what's going on campus, activities that are going on campus, maybe the activities that you will be doing as peer educators. Correcting misperceptions. Again, this goes back to some of that social norms piece, which we'll dig a little bit deeper in the next module. And then once again, providing resources. So that's educator. Activist. When you are an activist, you are creating change. That's what I want you to remember about this slide, is when you're an activist, you create change. Changing policies. Change the environment. Coming up with good partnerships across campus. Do you have fraternity and sorority life here? No. My undergrad didn't either. But, okay, so maybe it's not them that you could partner with, but maybe it's other student groups. Maybe it's student government. Maybe it's other parts of the administration. Confront unhealthy attitudes and behaviors. we'll talk a lot about being an empowered bystander. So that would be a part of this activist role as peer educators. And so you would just want to intervene, not be a passive bystander or just an observer. So when you think about being an activist, you should think about creating change. Furthermore, more definitions of that. Role model. When you are a role model, you should lead lives that are healthy and safe. Confront unhealthy behaviors, and share your own stories of struggling and having to ask for help. This is sometimes known as self-disclosure. Self-disclosure and being a role model can be a very impactful way of creating change for someone. There's a story that I think about whenever I think about being a role model and sharing our own story of struggling and change. There's a man who's walking down the street and he falls into a hole. He's in that hole and he starts yelling for help. Help, help, I'm stuck down here in this hole and I can't get out. A doctor walks by. The guy yells, "Doctor, doctor, please help me, I'm stuck in this hole and I can't get out." And the doctor writes out a prescription, throws it in the hole, and keeps on walking by. Priest walks by. The guy yells, "Father, Father, please help me, I'm stuck in this hole and I can't get out." Priest writes a prayer, throws in the hole, and keeps on walking. A friend walks by. Our guy in the hole yells, "Joe, it's me, I'm stuck in this hole and I can't get out." And what does Joe do? He jumps in that hole. And the guy in the hole is like, "Joe, you're an idiot. What the heck? Now we're both stuck down here." And Joe says, "I know. I fell down this hole last week, and I know the way out." So sharing our own stories of struggling and asking for help can be an impactful way to help someone create change and to be a role model. It's not necessarily about do as I say, not as I do. Anyone ever say that? I say that. It should be do as I say, as I do. Practice what you preach. Be a good role model. So when we think about being a role model, we should be healthy and balanced in our lives. We should walk the walk. And if we see others that are creating or engaging in unhealthy choices, we should confront those behaviors. And then sharing stories of change, as I mentioned. And last role is team member. When you're a team member, you should commit to being active in your group. You should work with your advisor or supervisors to meet and create goals. And you should support and encourage other members of your team. So being really active members of your peer education group. So there were 5 roles of peer educators. What were they? Friend, educator, activist, role model, team member. Which of the 5 roles you should think about creating change? Activist, refusing to be a passive bystander would also be activist. You definitely want to write that down, remember that for tomorrow, the activist role. But you should also know all 5. So those are the 5 roles of peer educators. In addition to there being 5 roles that peer educators play, there are 5 traps that peer educators fall into. These traps are enabling, trying to do too much, taking on something too big, internalizing the issue, and incurring liability. We're going to watch a few video clips which show a peer educator trying to help or trying to be helpful, but maybe not doing it so well. And I'll ask you to, so bless you. I was like, I'm going to say it again. I will ask whether or not what they did well, what they could have done differently, just sort of emphasize these traps that the peer educators themselves fall into. So the first video clip is enabling.
You sure you don't mind going with me?
It's no problem. You said you wanted to cut back on drinking, and I want to help you. We'll go to the party together. That way you hang out with me and maybe not get so caught up in it.
Yeah, you know, that's exactly what it is. It's like, whenever I get around those people, I just lose control.
Don't worry about it, man. I'll be there. So that way those people can't place the extra pressure on you. You can do this, just try to take charge of it, all right?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, you know, just remember, 5 drinks is my limit. Don't let me go past that.
Sure, definitely.
By the way, I'm really sorry about Friday. I really need somebody to talk to, you know?
Hey, you know I'm here for you. Day or night.
You didn't get in any trouble, did you? I mean, your roommate seemed pretty upset when I woke him up.
Don't worry about him. I'll take care of it. I'll see you tonight, okay?
Yeah, sure. We'll be fine, man.
Sure.
All right, so that was enabling. What did our friend not do so well here? In terms of trying to be helpful. Yeah.
The guy was like, oh, look, I'm having a problem because I'm like drinking too much. And he was like, oh, well then that's okay. Like, go to the party, but like I'll go with you. Which is like enabling. It's like, you can do that, but I'll help you.
Right.
So like he was saying, like you can go.
Yeah. Like, oh, I'll just make sure that you don't have more than 5 drinks, which is already binge drinking. But whatever. What else? What else was not so good here?
He was like, sure, okay. Like he wasn't like he didn't seem like so like empowering. He just kind of was like, yeah, I get what you mean. Like not like he was just kind of like going with what he was saying.
Yeah. It was almost like his mind was elsewhere.
Yeah, like
Okay.
he wasn't actively listening.
Yeah.
He also, when he talked about like how he gets with those people, like he didn't control people, he didn't like hold him accountable. He was like, yeah, like it's probably those people. Like he wasn't like, no, like there's something fishy going on here.
He was kind of placing that blame on someone else.
I was gonna say, and like along with that, like if it's the people that he's blaming and that he's saying the problem is, then he shouldn't be around them to begin with. So it shouldn't. Yeah, he shouldn't be going to the party at all.
Okay.
Also, like, when they were talking about it last night, it was making someone upset with bringing other people into the relationship.
Yeah. Okay, so there was something with the roommate and you woke him up. All right. Was there another hand back there?
Oh, I was just gonna say what Natalie said about how like he didn't hold him responsible for his actions, but I also think that goes for what Maddie was saying about like the roommate, like that kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
he was saying, I'll take care of it, not that he should be, but he should be held responsible.
Yeah, that's a great point there. That's kind of the point when it comes to enabling. When we enable, sometimes it comes from a good place. We don't want to make someone feel uncomfortable. Well, quite frankly, why would anyone want to create change if they didn't feel uncomfortable? Like, you need to be uncomfortable to create change, to recognize that there's a problem. When you take away someone's discomfort, they're just going to keep repeating the same behavior. Best friend Ryan. I'm a very type A person. He is not. He's like type Omega, like he's gone through the entire, he's not type B, he's like gone through the entire English alphabet and then moved to the Greek one. So, like that is how type B he is. A few months ago, we had finished grad school, he was moving to Salt Lake City, asked him for months, hey, do you need me to move with you? I can take the time off, I can drive you out there. Never, I'll let you know. Bless you. Never let me know. It's Wednesday, a Wednesday in July, and he calls me up, hey, can you help me go to Salt Lake City? Like, I have all this furniture that I need you to help me move with, blah, 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 blah. I went with him. I enabled him. It was a $260 one-way ticket on the way back for me from Denver. I enable him, and that is not healthy for him, but I do it, because I fall into this trap. Recently, he wants help again. And I'm like, hey, I can come to Salt Lake City, just let me know. Flights were super cheap. Finally, 2 weeks ago, he's like, oh yeah, can you come out and help me? I wasn't going to let me enable him again. Plus, I was on the road for work. But I was like, I could have taken that time off had you let me know. I unfortunately cannot do this right now. Sorry. But again, I did not take away his discomfort in the first place. If I just would have let him move to Salt Lake City by himself, maybe he would have learned something. I don't know. But that's sort of enabling. You try to take away someone's discomfort, and when you take away their discomfort, they don't want to create change. You give solutions to all the little problems, therefore avoiding the big problems. So, oh, well, I'll just let you have 5 drinks. That will be your limit. Let's not worry about the fact that you say that you might have some sort of an alcohol problem. Okay? And again, when you are not feeling uncomfortable, you have no motivation to create change. So that's enabling right there. Here's the next one, which I'm sure some students might be able to relate to.
Hey! No, we were supposed to get together for dinner, weren't we? I'm sorry, got so much going on this week.
It's okay, no big deal.
Oh, it is a big deal. I mean, you said it was important. Did something happen over break? Was it something back home?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I have this meeting right now, and so I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to just leave. So, how about we get together tomorrow around 7?
Well, how about we just forget about it? I mean, I don't want to add more to your stress.
No, you're a friend. Tomorrow at 7. I have this newspaper meeting, and it's going to press, so I might be just a few minutes late, but I'll be there, okay?
Okay.
Anyone relate to her?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like most hands should be up in her right now. Okay, so what was going on with her, with Hey Girl over here? I like to call her Hey Girl because of the way she says hey.
Oh my gosh, I said hey girl to everyone.
Hey. So what was up with Hey Girl?
She had so much going on in her schedule that she wasn't really able to be there at times.
Couldn't really be present because she had so much that she was doing. Okay. What else?
She wasn't like delegating what she had to do, so like that might have been something we were like, oh, like, maybe you have somebody else to talk about, kind of like outsourcing in order to get help.
Outsourcing the help, yeah. Would be a great option. What else?
She's kind of providing like false hope because if she doesn't show up tomorrow at 7, then it's kind of like she left her hanging again.
Right.
She really needs to talk about it.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Again, she's like, oh, I'll meet you at 7, but I'm probably going to be late for that, so maybe not. Yeah. This is trying to do too much. When you try to do too much, you are overstressed. Hey girl, right here. Be honest about your time commitments. You know, sorry, like newspaper going to press, maybe I can call you whenever I'm done. I don't know what you could have said differently. Value the other person's issue as important. That way they feel like, oh, she does care about me, she's just not available at that point in time. And then maybe refer to someone who has the time to help. So outsourcing, I think was the term that we used. Maybe if you can't be 100% present for someone, you might not necessarily be the best person to help at that point in time. So that's that second trying to do too much.
So, what do you want to talk to me about?
I don't know what to do about my roommate.
Amanda? What's been going on with her?
Something's up with her. She's been hanging out with this older guy off campus.
Oh, I didn't know that. Maybe that's why I haven't seen her so much.
Yeah, exactly. He won't let her hang out with us.
Won't let her hang out? He can't control who her friends are.
Well, that's what I'm afraid of. I think he's hitting her.
You're kidding me. What makes you think that?
Well, I've noticed bruises a few times, and I asked her about it, but she said some kind of freak accident. And then I see her with him, and he can get so angry.
Wow, we have got to get her out of that relationship. She has to start hanging out with us every night. And if she wants to go out with him, we'll make her go in a group, just so that they're never alone. And we really need to get somebody to talk to her about what's going on.
Yeah, but who?
I don't know, maybe her friend Mike from work?
You think he'll work?
I don't know, what else can we do?
All right, what's going on here? Yeah.
The roommate was talking about how she thinks she's getting beat, but she doesn't know for sure. So the other girl was like, oh well, we have to do something about it, thinking that it was actually happening, but they don't know, and if that would cause kind of awkward.
Yeah. Okay. So they're kind of going off of some rumors at this point. Okay. What else? Yeah.
If somebody's a danger to somebody else, you don't want to necessarily get in the middle of that. And you get know that you're getting in the middle. There's a certain point where you have to go to kind of a higher control once you get once you get definite, concrete, and admit it.
You might, you don't want to put yourself in harm's way.
I never talked to the girl that was in a relationship with the guy.
Oh.
And what we talked about all day yesterday was giving control to the victim or the person. So they didn't even talk to her first. So it's a better first step than just going in
What, you mean coming up with a plan to create change and not involving the person that you want to create change for? It's not a good idea?
Not a good idea.
What? Yeah, that's kind of and what was their solution? We're not going to let her hang out with him. Cool, what was the problem in the first place? He won't let her hang out with us. Same thing. Not going to work that way. You're not involving the person who you might be trying to create a change plan for in the first place. Yes, this is taking on something too big, and you kind of hit the nail on the head right up here with like recognizing when something is outside of your control and when something is too big for you to handle by yourself. So recognize when a situation is beyond your ability to help. Maybe refer to some campus resources, which I'm sure you have plenty of. You have a few sitting in the back right there, as well as some other resources that I believe probably worked with you yesterday. So just recognizing when you might be taking on something that's just a little too big for you to handle by yourself. All right. Fourth one.
I'm so worried about Jess. We've got to get her some help. Can you believe some guy would actually do that? And you know what? That was her first time ever. She's trying to pretend like it didn't happen. She doesn't want to talk about it. I mean, if she thinks about it half as much as I do, she must be going crazy. The whole thing is like a flashback to me. I'm afraid to leave her alone. She's just so depressed. Don't you think she should be angry? I'm angry. I see him in finance and all I do is glare at him. Why do we let guys like that get away with this?
What was this one? What was going on here? This is called internalizing the issue.
She was like bringing it back to herself and like saying like this guy is just like the guy I was with, or the situation could be different. Like, they could be similar, but like you have to keep it professional, like keep it like you are there to help and not it's not you.
Yeah, so she's had a similar experience, it sounds like.
She's disclosing information to someone else when she's trusted with it. Like, if someone came up to me and told me about that, I wouldn't be saying it to anyone else. I'd tell them, hey, these are places you could go to talk to someone.
Right.
So, like, I don't think that was the right choice.
So talking to someone else about this issue was...
I was just gonna say she made her friend's problem her own problem.
Yeah.
Like, and in doing that, like in taking on, I think like that, like those emotions or whatever, like she was kind of saying like my friend should be feeling this way, like I want her to be like doing these things and like feeling these sorts of things, but like because that situation was not happening to her, like she, I don't know, like you can't really speak for your friend or like how your friend should be feeling, so I think that also is not really good for her friend either, for her to be acting that way and saying you should be doing this and you should be responding this way.
Again, they're not even including the person who potentially has a problem in the first place, which that should be a huge red flag for us. But what happens when we start internalizing the issue is we have had something happen similarly to ourselves in our lives, and we start to get triggered by a situation. Sometimes we can't help that when we get triggered. When we get triggered, emotions bubble up inside of us, and it's hard to control. And I don't want to say that necessarily that's a bad thing. It's just important for us to recognize whether or not we are handling this well or if we need to do something else. So remember, when you start to internalize the issue, you're taking someone else's problem and it's manifesting itself in a way that you can't control. So for example, and you might want to remember this for the test, if someone were to come to you and talk about how they were suffering from depression and having these conversations with their friend has started to make you feel depressed, that would be an example of internalizing the issue. Someone else's issue is triggering something in you that is making you affected and unable to be a great peer educator. So that's internalizing the issue. So try to create a mental boundary between the student's issue and your own. And if you can't, then you need to recognize, hey, I might need to refer. So internalizing the issue. And then that leaves us to our fifth trap.
Adam, is everything all right? You seem so distant. Are you okay?
This thing with my girlfriend Whitney has got me pretty messed up.
Is that what you were wearing at the movies yesterday? We're all wondering what you wear.
Look, I'll tell you something, but you have to promise that you won't tell anyone else.
Sure.
You swear? You promise?
Yeah, I promise.
Okay. The other night after I saw Whitney with that other guy, I went out and got drunk. When I got home, I swallowed a bunch of John's pills.
Oh, Adam.
Yeah, but I chickened out like 3 minutes later, turned them all up.
Adam, I don't know what to say. This is serious. You've got to talk to someone about this. You try to take your own life?
Look, I don't want to talk about this anymore. You made a promise to me. And I swear, if you tell anyone, remember, you made a promise.
Yeah, but, you know.
Look, I don't want you to tell anyone about this. I don't need you making any more trouble. I've got John thinking that someone else took his pills. I've got to go.
Whoops. Nothing there. Yeah.
I feel like she kind of like forced it out of him a little bit, like not really, but like in a way he's like, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to talk about it. She's like, oh, you can tell me, you can tell me. He was like, like it seemed like he didn't feel comfortable telling her.
Okay. What else? Especially in terms of incurring liability, which is the trend. Yeah.
Well, if someone's trying to take your own life, or if someone's trying to take their own life, like, you have to report that. So she can't promise that, like, she shouldn't have promised that she can keep a secret when she's legally not allowed to.
So there's a difference between confidentiality and privacy. And I'm not sure what all the training you had yesterday was, so maybe we can come back to this a little bit more. But there is a difference between confidentiality and privacy. What Adam here is worried about is John finding out. Like, there's a difference between sharing out and sharing up. What we saw in those last few videos was sharing out, talking amongst the same peer group. Sharing up is reporting to the authorities and the folks that actually need to know, legally and for other reasons. So when you think about confidentiality, and we think about incurring liability, recognize that there is a difference between that privacy. Whatever you tell me, I can keep it private. I can't necessarily keep it confidential. On a college campus, bless you, there are about 3 different types of folks that can remain confidential. That would be medical professionals, a lawyer if you've given them a retainer, and then clergy. Those are pretty much the extent of who can remain confidential. Other folks sort of have a mandate to report. I tend to throw it back to the back of the room whenever I get to this point to see have you talked about sort of their specific roles as university officials in terms of mandated reporting? What would happen if they were to witness a situation like this?
Right, because they are not employees of the university, they don't have the same reporting requirement. That being said, we would still expect them to report it at least to us, more so that we can get help for somebody than anything. From a Clery standpoint, which I think we're going to get more into later, right, as far as Title IX stuff. Essentially, how many RAs do we have? Just count. But Carol, are you doing it again next year?
I'm not going to be an RA again, actually.
So we really have no one who's mandated by the university then. Unless you're in an employed role of the university, then you're not required. RAs in particular are required to report. So they can say they'll keep it as private as possible, but they cannot promise confidentiality.
So keep that in mind when someone potentially does self-disclose something to you or disclose something to you, whether or not.
I have one other point. And Kiara, when she is in our office, or Nicole, when they're in our office answering the phones and acting as a health center professional, they are afforded the same level of confidentiality because they're basically working under my direction. But as an advisor for a club, they're actually considered to be mandated reporters. So if something comes to them as an advisor, and I know this sounds a little hairy, and it is, but they actually cannot keep it confidential. It has to be reported if it is thought to be a crime as far as, you know, sexual assault or something like that. That was probably more detail than you wanted, but.
This every time I show this video it becomes a can of worms. That's
Yeah.
why I like to sometimes pass the buck a little bit to you know, get a definition.
I'm glad I came back in at that moment.
Exactly, right? Because Nicole would be like, oh no, can of worms, what do we do now?
Yes.
But when you think about incurring liability, you should be aware of what those liabilities exist on campus and the roles that we play on campus as employees or not employees, as you know, a student organization versus if you are an RA. You know, if issues are beyond your skills in our training, then you should refer to those counselors. Like I said, oh, Adam doesn't want John to find out. You know, getting him help, someone else who can help him, might be a little bit different. Yes, it might make it awkward in the meantime, but I would say most times that person will come back to you and say thank you. Happened to me whenever I was an RA football team. Big linebacker on my floor. Part of their football hazing, we found out I had to drink a fifth of vodka in a night. Came back exceptionally drunk, clearly. Throwing up everywhere. It was a bad thing. I ended up having to call the ambulance on him. I haven't gone to the hospital yet, have a stomach pump. He hated me for the rest of the year, which was super intimidating being an RA and like a 400-pound linebacker not liking you. But by the time I graduated 3 years later, he said, thank you, you saved my life. I appreciate that you had my back. So even if in that moment they hate your guts, I would say that longitudinally, they will appreciate you taking action to try to save them. I know it's hard because we all want everyone to like us. Doesn't always happen that way. But most people can respect when we're doing our job or doing things that we're trained to respond. So those are those 5 traps of peer educators. What were they again? Enabling. Too much. Too big. Internalizing. Liability. When you get triggered, when someone else's problem is starting to impact ourselves, what trap is that? Internalizing the issue. 5 roles of peer educators. Friend. Educator. Activist. Role model. Team member. Which role talks about creating change? Activist. Peer education has 2 primary impacts. What is impacted by peer education? Peer educators themselves. Campuses and communities in which they live. And then the answer to the first question on the test. Whatever you want. All right, so that's about 6. Woohoo, 6 out of 30. We're getting there. All right, and then the last part of this module, we start talking about, we talk about confidentiality. See, I skipped a whole bunch of slides because we had good discussion. We talk about ethics and what it means to be ethical or to act with integrity. This is sort of how we wrap up module 1. When we think about ethics and these 5 principles of integrity, what you should think about is that everyone deserves your respect, even if you don't like them, even if you vehemently disagree with them. They at least deserve your respect as a human being. You have the right to make mistakes. No one is perfect. I'm almost there, I would say about 98%, but I'm not there yet. Maybe next year, call me up and see if I've made it to 100% yet. But we have the right to make mistakes. Never use your position of influence to negatively affect another person. No personal gain. Don't use your skills for any personal gain. Don't negatively affect another person. Make your decisions based on what you know and believe, regardless of what everyone else is doing. Sometimes that means going against the grain. And then take your own advice. If I wouldn't do this myself, why would I give this advice to someone else? From these 5 principles of integrity come Kitchener, who is an ethicist. He has developed 5 ethical principles. First one is to respect autonomy. Very similar to, everyone is their own person, we should respect them. Do no harm. Some of you medical folks probably have heard this before, do no harm. What you do should benefit others. Probably good. And then these last 2, I'm not opening up this can of worms, but it's to be just and be faithful. And before I can sort of have a discussion about this, I think folks just need to do your own sort of self-reflection. What does it mean to be just? What does it mean to be faithful? Everyone has a different definition of what those mean. For some, being faithful could deal with a religious faith. For others, that might not be the case. So recognizing that this is just one ethicist's definition of these ethical principles, but remembering that when we start making our own decisions. And then hopefully no one sees this question on the exam. Why do I have to say that? Because this is on the makeup test if you fail the first one. But I will go over it just in case someone would have to see this question. This is called doing, no, that will not be you. I have faith. This is called an ethics check. It comes from another set of ethicists called Blanchard and Peel. I will be completely honest, I'm not a huge fan of this, but I will teach it because it's part of the course. You ask yourself these 3 questions, and if the answer is no, then it's not ethical. That's where I sort of have an issue. Is it legal? If something is not legal, it is therefore unethical, according to these ethicists. Laws are made by humans. Laws change. Things that are legal now have not always been legal, or vice versa. So that's why I don't like this. But, bless you, specific to these ethicists, that is the first question, is to ask, is it legal? Yes, okay, no, not ethical. Second question is it balanced? Will the harm done be less than the good that comes from it? Does the good outweigh the bad? Yeah. I often say that bad outweigh the good, and that's never right. Like, considering, is it balanced? Does the good and the bad equal the effects cause and effect? And then the last question is, how will it make me feel about myself? It makes me feel good. Yay! Ethical. Not good? Feel like crap? Maybe not. So that's, like I said, one set of ethicists' definition of what it means to be ethical. Is it legal? Is it balanced? How will it make me feel about myself? Good? So that is sort of, when we think about wrapping up this module, this interactive activity was to look at our Peer Educator Code of Ethics, which is in the back cover of your workbook. What I'd like you to do is just to look at that tonight, because we will ask you to affirm or agree to those once you've passed the test, which everyone will tomorrow, yeah? So that's going to be sort of how we wrap up this module, is wanting you to just look at that Code of Ethics this evening. Front cover, not back cover, sorry. I don't know, front and back, whatever. So front cover, look at that tonight. That's going to be how we wrap up Module 1. I'm going to jump into Module 2 quickly, but then we'll take a break pretty early in here, because I haven't lost folks yet. No one's asleep.